Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of the biography of Uthman ibn Affan, and we were dealing a lot with finance, and it appears we are going to continue upon that vein. Let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Go ahead and listen to this as you are organizing your bookshelf, rearranging your spice rack, visiting a koi pond, whatever fun thing it is that you're doing. Let's begin. Governors, judges, military personnel, and other government officials were given regular salaries. Money was used to facilitate easier travel for Hajj and to improve the cloth covering of the Kaaba. The state treasury also financed the digging of wells for the benefit of the arriving and departing citizens of the Islamic State. Income from zakah and the 1/5 of the spoils of war was used to sponsor the weak members of society. So, using the spoils of war to benefit the people, not just the upper echelons, especially the poor and the orphans. It was also used to help strangers and wayfarers and to free Muslim prisoners, so like ransoms. The continuation of the system of allowances. The system of allowances continued during the time of Uthman. He wrote to his governor in Kufa, "Give precedence to the prisoners who came before you, by whose hands Allah opened these lands. Let those who stay in these lands due to their efforts follow them, unless the truth becomes too heavy for them. And they want to stop following it. These people, however, certainly follow it. Recognize everyone's due status and give them according to how strictly they follow the truth. For one can achieve justice only by knowing the people." So, how strictly they follow the truth. Some people will say, "Oh, anything strict is extreme." Strict doesn't equal extreme. Okay? We should write that. Strict doesn't equal extreme. When the Islamic conquest grew during this era, the sources of state income were augmented as well. As a result, he increased his spending. He raised the soldiers' salaries by 100 dirhams each. He was the first caliph to ever raise people's allowances. Al-Hassan states, so he's the first caliph to raise people's allowances. "I heard Uthman's announcer call, 'People, come and take your clothing.' They came and took the clothes that had been prepared for them. Then he called, 'People, come and take butter and honey.' He circulated provisions, goodness, and harmony. All believers on earth got love, aid, and friendship in return." So, I want you to think about something here. Circulating provisions, and then butter and honey. So, today, people might not appreciate butter, but dairy, in a time where there wasn't a real refrigeration, it is something to really admire. Like, wow, butter is delicious, and having ancient butter must have been as good as the raw butter is today, because there's a farm called Raw Farm, and their butter is really good. And the honey, so I buy raw honey. I suggest you do that as well, because when they start to cook the honey, it becomes different, and a lot of the minerals and vitamins in it get cooked away, and you don't get to taste as much of the nuances of the flavor. And so giving people butter and honey, that's a true luxury. You know, when you add butter to sauces, to like baste seared steaks, to coat chicken in the oven, it adds immense flavor. Okay? And that's a definite privilege. Getting to dip your bread in butter and honey is also really wonderful. Uthman focused upon the state borders and keeping troops stationed therein. He used to order his commanders to provide for the troops and give allowances to them. How the abundance of wealth affected the society and economics. During the era of Uthman, the tax money on agricultural land was abundant, and wealth was coming from all directions. Such a large amount of wealth affected the society and its economics, so he set up various means to save and spend it. Following are some examples the way Uthman spent the money. 1. Abu Ishaq narrated from his grandfather, who said that Uthman asked him when he once passed by, "How many family members do you have, old man?" He replied, "I have such and such a number." Uthman said, "We have fixed for you 15, meaning 1,500, and your family 10,000. That is quite nice. That is nice, very nice. Muhammad ibn Hilal al-Madini said, "My father related to me from my grandfather that she used to go to Uthman, but one day she did not go. Uthman asked his family, 'Why do I not see so-and-so?' His wife replied, 'Commander of the Faithful, she gave birth to a baby boy tonight.' She, the grandmother, said, 'He sent me 50 dirhams and a small sewn bawlan garment and said, "This is your son's allowance, and this is his clothing. After a year, we will raise it to 100. So these types of acts really do warm the heart, because when you don't have much and then someone gives you something, it's quite nice. Truly. He also increased the support of the residents of Al-Awali in Medina by providing them more foods and clothes. The commander Katan ibn Amr al-Hilali once gave 4,000 dirhams to encourage his army of 4,000 men. The governor of Basra, Abdullah bin Amir, thought this was too much and wrote to Uthman about it. The Caliph, however, permitted it and said, "Whatever helps in the path of Allah is permissible." Okay, look at that. Whatever helps in the path of Allah is permissible. Thus, reward became yet another means of financial support. Uthman also began giving the allowances of martyred Muslim soldiers to their daughters and wives who were their female inheritors. After Abdullah ibn Masud had passed away, Azubair bin al-Awwam said to Uthman, "Give Abdullah's allowance to me, for Abdullah's family members deserve it more than the state treasury does." He agreed and gave him 15,000 dirhams. That's wonderful. You gotta have ways of supporting the widows and such. It's really important, especially because they're gonna have a very difficult time getting on without their man. We may also note that agriculture, manufacture, and trade began to flourish during the era of this rightly guided caliph. Along with wealth came many cultural developments that were not known in the Arabian Peninsula before the great conquests. Muslims became more acquainted with the inventions of foreign nations and borrowed ideas from them. As a result, some companions built large and spacious homes. The foreigners who were taken captive during the conquest helped them develop the social and economic system of the Muslim state. So basically, not letting the smart people go to waste. Trading ideas, extracting information. Genghis Khan did the same. And any smart person, really. And then, what did America do in Operation Paperclip? Did Uthman spend on his relatives from the state treasury? Some historians, as well as Harijites, are those what they call the Hawarij? Accuse Uthman of wasting the state's funds by giving most of them to his relatives. This accusation was supported by a propaganda campaign against him led by the Saba'ids and the Rafidi Shiites. The fact remains that such allegations are baseless. Uthman was very rich, and since he was careful about maintaining the ties of kinship, he gave his relatives a great deal from his own wealth, because he was already rich, wasn't he? His own words refute the baseless claim. They say I love my household and give them much. This love has not led me to be unjust. I make them fulfill their duties. As for the spending, I only give them from my own money. I do not believe that the wealth of the Muslims is lawful for me, or for anyone else for that matter. I used to give a lot of money from my own pocket to the people during the time of Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him. Yeah, didn't he arm? Was it the Battle of Badr? I don't recall which battle it was, but he literally bought like arms for the war. That couldn't have been cheap. Abu Bakr and Umar, even though at the time I had a desire to hold on to my money and acquire more, how can I be that now, when I am the eldest in my house, on the verge of death, and having bid farewell to my loved ones and my family, the oppressors say this about me? Uthman had divided his wealth and land among Banu Umayyah. Okay, so that's a tribe. And his children. These were just the regular people among those whom he gave money. He began from the sons of Abil As, giving the men of Al-Hakam's family 10,000 each, the total of which was 100,000. The sons of Uthman got the same amount. Banu al-As, Banu al-Is, and Banu Harb were given their share as well. The famous authentic texts that describe his great virtues clearly show that the stories claiming that he wasted state funds and spent most of the money on himself, his family, and his palaces are only fabrications. However, some scholars hold that the near relatives who get a share of the spoils, as mentioned in the Quranic verse, mean the near relatives of the ruler. Ibn Taymiyyah explains that Uthman's usage of the money can be viewed from three angles. Okay, let's see. Those to whom he gave the money include the zakah collectors, who were entitled to it even if they were rich. 2. The near relatives mentioned in the Quranic verse, which is also indicate the relatives of the ruler. 3. Uthman's relatives comprised a large clan when compared to those of Abu Bakr and Umar. His obligation to spend on them and appoint them as governors was greater than that of Abu Bakr and Umar. It is mentioned in Tariq at-Tabari that Uthman once ordered Abdullah ibn Said ibn Abi Asar to march from Egypt and to conquer Tunisia. He told them that if he was victorious, he could take 1/5 of the 1/5 of the spoils extra. Abdullah left with his army after crossing Egypt. They pushed into the land of North Africa, conquering it by the mountains. When he divided the spoils among his soldiers, he took 1/5 of the 1/5 for himself. That's a lot of math. Me, 1/5, 1/5. What are you talking about? And sent Ibn Wathima and Nadari to give the remaining 4/5, all these fractions, to Uthman. A few soldiers complained to Uthman. Uthman said to them, I told him to take it, but if it upsets you, he will return it. They confirmed that they were upset by this, so Uthman ordered Abdullah to return the extra, and he complied. The way Uthman treated his relatives demonstrates the benevolence and mercy of Islam, as Allah has mentioned. It is that of which Allah gives good tidings to his servants, who believe and do righteous deeds. Say, O Muhammad, I do not ask you for this message any payment, but only good will through kinship. Whoever commits a good deed will increase for him good therein. Indeed, Allah is forgiving and appreciative. Quran 42:23. It's good that he actually gave something to his family, like of his wealth. My family is incredibly stingy. Nobody's given nothing. One example of the stinginess. My great grandma is still alive. She has an entire house. She sleeps on her firstborn's couch. My grandma's couch lives with her, which is fine. But to have a whole house and she has, okay, so she had, I think, 9 or 10 children. And then one of my aunts had 12 children. And those 12 children, many of them have grandchildren. She has so many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So think about this. So my mom is her grandchild. Then there's me, the great-grandchild. And I have children, so great-great-grandchildren. She probably has over 100 descendants alive right now. And with the housing market, she has hoarded stuff in there, just junk. The water, they turned off the water, and I don't know how she's paying the property taxes on it. But she's like 90 something, and she doesn't think, you know what? I'm gonna give this house to somebody in the family, or sell it, and then divide that money somehow. I mean, there's so many of us, it'd be like $20 here, $20 there, right? Or she could pick her favorite grandchild and then give that to her, so that could be something, Oh, they're arguing in the living room while playing. But that just shows you that some families don't really have love or care for their own descendants. It's just like rabbits breeding, and then there's a bunch of little bunny rabbits hopping around. That's pretty much what we are. I left home at 17. Never once was I told, come back and live with us. Do you need money to pay a bill? I was 17. Came to California. The first time I came, I think I was like 16, 15, It's really quite sad. And when my mom's apartment building caught on fire, the whole place got burnt up, the building, and my grandma did not offer my mom a place to stay in their house. They had 3 empty bedrooms. Didn't offer them a place to stay, and my mom and my brother went to stay in a shelter. So, and one of my uncles is wealthy, has a very large estate. He only takes care of one of his daughters. It's a very cold family I have. Very cold. So when I hear Uthman taking care of his family, you have to really look at how many people don't even have someone who cares. I don't think my dad has ever said, I'll never let you go homeless, you can come live with me. He's only visited his grandchild, my firstborn, once when she was 1. Never came out to visit ever again. Uthman had a noble character. He was a man of great modesty and generosity, who favored his relatives for the sake of Allah in order to incline their hearts toward what is lasting rather than towards what shall vanish, this temporal world. After all, the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself would give to some people and leave those in whose hearts guidance and faith had already been settled. Still, some people sternly opposed Uthman because of this trait, just as some Harijites stood up against the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, for favoring some over others. Jabir bin Abdullah said, Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, was dividing the spoils in Al-Jirana when a man said to him, be just. He replied, I would be a truly miserable case if I was not just. Bukhari. Addressing the council members, Uthman justified his benevolence to his family and relatives. I shall tell you about myself and those for whom I am responsible. My 2 companions who preceded me wronged themselves and their relatives who were under them, though they intended only good. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, used to give to his relatives. Since my family is poor and has little income, I have given some of the wealth to them, for it is under my authority. If you deem that wrong, then express your disapproval. But the first route of charity is supposed to be your family, right? Your kith and kin. You gotta maintain those ties. There's nothing wrong about supporting your family. That's not nepotism. You know. I think that's just being a dad. Being the patriarch. That's the patriarch's job. Ibn Taymiyyah replies in the following words to those who have accused Uthman of favoring his family with large amounts of state money. They say that he used to favor his family with large amounts of wealth taken from the state treasury, to the extent that he gave 4 people from the Quraysh to whom he had married his daughters 400,000 dinars. Okay, so he married his daughters, and 1 million dinars to Marwan. Dang, man, that's generous. Oh, but they're saying like that came from the state treasury. We ask, where is the authentic narration to verify this? He used to spend on his relatives just as he used to spend on others as well. He was charitable to all the Muslims. We need an authentic narration to prove that he spent such a large amount of money. Since there is not a single authentic narration, we can safely conclude that these accusations are utter lies. Neither Uthman nor any other rightly guided caliph ever gave anyone such large amounts of wealth. Well, you always want to have authentic narrations, right? Then you ask, what makes something authentic? But haters can hate, but also it could be on accident, you know? But I can see how someone could think that. Because, I mean, kings of England, the Queen of England, right? I mean, you look at the monarchs, I mean, caliphs aren't kings, but they would spend on their families. I mean, that's what they do. Lavish weddings. I mean, that's what royals did. But, you know, when you're already rich, and then you're in a position of authority, people, the common folk, will see like, oh, you know, you're spending, so it must be our money instead of your own money. I guess you know, and there's rumor spreaders. You never know. It's such a long time ago. People's hearts with envy. But people just worried about corruption, you know. Now we're in chapter 10, Uthman's judicial policies and expert legal rulings. Uthman's reign was an extension of the rightly guided era, the importance of which is evident because it was very close to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This was particularly true in the field of the judiciary. The significance of the rightly guided era in the field of the judiciary is due to 2 fundamental facts. 1. The texts of the Prophet's era regarding the judiciary were being preserved, and action was strictly restricted to what was mentioned therein. This was taken as a regular methodology. Okay, so the Prophet's era, texts of the Prophet's era regarding judiciary matters were starting to be documented. And then people started to restrict what they took and to make it just from there. So the methodology was strictly regulated to the preserved judiciary texts. So the Sunnah. Judicial bodies were formed to further strengthen the pillars of the vast Islamic state and to handle the various new situations that the Muslims were now facing. So a judiciary branch is born. Through Allah's help and then his own genius, Umar was able to establish a judicial system for the Islamic State. It had its rules and principles from which Uthman benefited when appointing judges and determining their wages and specialities. These also helped him understand the necessary qualifications and duties of judges. The sources for deriving judicial rulings, and the proofs upon which the judge relies. So, sources for deriving judiciary rulings, and then the proofs upon which the judge relies. Now, proofs. What I like about us Muslims is we're like, where's the proof for this? Where's the textual source? The judges in his time also benefited from the previous judgments of Abu Bakr and Umar in their respective eras. When Uthman became caliph, the judges of Medina were Ali ibn Abi Talib, Zayd ibn Thabit, and Asaib ibn Yazid. Okay, cool. So Ali was a judge? I didn't know that. Zayd ibn Thabit. The judges. I keep thinking of like black robes, you know? Like how our American system is. The Supreme Court. And researchers have stated that Uthman did not allow any of them to rule in a case independently, as in the era of Umar. Okay, so that's so switch up was that they had to be a unit? Instead, he used to look into each matter himself and then consult them and other companions regarding it. If they agreed with him, he judged accordingly. If they did not, he gave the matter further consideration. Now this is interesting because when we were reading Machiavelli yesterday, he talked about how a prince needs to have a council of wise men to talk to, and then he has to reason with the information he's been given by those men. So you see the similarity there. This would mean that Uthman and Machiavelli is coming way after the caliphs. This would mean that Uthman exempted these three judges in Medina from their positions and kept them as his advisors in any disagreement that was brought to his attention. Wow, really makes me think of what we read yesterday in Machiavelli. At the same time, he also consulted other companions. Others, however, are of opinion that there is no clear text telling us that these three were dismissed, and that the most that can be said about the matter is that Uthman did recognize the authority of Umar's judges in Medina, but took over the rules himself in quite a few major cases, only asking for their advice regarding them. Yeah, it sounds exactly. This is pretty awesome. It's really cool when you read in a different book something, and then you read another book something, and they're very similar. This difference of opinion stems from contradictory narrations. Okay. Let's see. Al-Bayhaqi has narrated in As-Sunan and Waqi in Akhbar al-Qudatil Waqi. So these books, I wonder if they're in English. And the following wording is from the latter, from Abdul Rahman ibn Sa'id, who said, "My grandfather told me, I saw Uthman in the mosque, and two people who were quarreling came to him. He said to one of them, 'Go and call Ali.' To the other he instructed, 'Go and call Talha bin Ubaidullah, Al-Zubair, and Abdul Rahman.' After they came and sat down, he instructed the two, 'Speak.' After they had spoken, he turned to the companions and asked, 'What is your advice?' If they agreed with him, he judged between the two accordingly. If not, he gave the matter further consideration. They would accept this and leave. Uthman ibn Affan is not known to have ever used a judge in Medina until he was killed." When discussing Uthman's achievements, it is stated in Tariq at-Tabari, at that time, Zayd bin Thabit was Uthman's judge. Oh, cool. So we just learned another fact here? Because we learned it here. We read it just now. But hearing it again, right? Which indicates that Uthman kept Zayd in office and allowed him to rule in cases of quarrels. However, as long as it is possible to combine the text without contradiction, it is better to accept both instead of taking just one. When nothing indicates that it is closer to the truth, they can be combined by concluding that Uthman did retain the judges of Medina and let them rule in some cases. However, he handled some of the more difficult matters himself, and for help, he consulted his companions, among who were his judges. Alright. So, sounds pretty good to me. That's like a solid system, right? I mean, having Ali as one of the people who you consult shows that they had a close relationship. So let's put an annotation right here. Ali bin Abi Talib. Uthman would sometimes appoint judges to different districts. For instance, he appointed Ka'b bin Suwar as the judge of Basra. At other times, he let the governor do the job himself. For instance, he instructed the governor of Basra to judge among his people, in addition to ruling them after Ka'b bin Suwar had been dismissed. The job description of Ya'la ibn Umayyah, who was both the governor and the ruler of Sana, was similar. So, a judge, sometimes appointing judges for different districts. So, judges, and then the governors. Think about something here. Not only did your politicians have to handle the economics, but they had to judge in social disputes. That's quite interesting. We may also note that some governors would choose the judges of their respective provinces themselves. And these judges would then be accountable to them. This indicates that governors had more authority over the judges during the time of Uthman. Well, that's interesting. The messages and letters sent by Uthman to his governors, military commanders on the border, and Muslims in general indicate that he made judgeship the role of the governors. Okay, so judgeship, the role of the governors. His governors, military commanders on the borders, and Muslims in general indicate that he made judgeship the role of the governors, or whomever they deemed suitable for the job, so either or. This is because in situations where Umar used to be constant correspondent with his judges of different regions, we find little communication between Uthman and his judges. Ibn Umar excuses himself from taking office as judge. Uthman said to Ibn Umar, "Judge among people." He replied, "I shall not judge between two people nor lead any two men. Did you not hear the Prophet, peace be upon him? He said, whoever seeks refuge in Allah has truly sought a great refuge." Uthman answered, "Yes, I did." Ibn Umar then declared, "Thus I seek refuge in Allah from being employed by you." This being the case, Uthman excused him for not taking the job and instructed him, "Do not tell anyone about this." I wonder why he didn't want to be the judge. We've seen a lot of hadiths by him, by the way. Quite a lot. The courts. Some books of history state that among the noble deeds of Uthman was the setting up of a formal courthouse. Okay, setting up of a formal courthouse. This is based on the narration of Ibn As-Sakir from Abu Saleh Mawla bin Abbas, who said, "Al-Abbas sent me to call Uthman, so I went to him in the court." If the narration is authentic, Uthman was the first to ever establish a court in Islam. For it is well known that the two caliphs before him used to sit in the mosque and judge from there. Oh. So we're seeing a lot of different functions of the mosque. That's pretty cool. And then having a separate place, because disputing in the mosque is, if the mosque is a place for prayer, it's not for selling or disputing, so creating a separate courthouse makes sense. Because you want to keep the mosque peaceful, right? You want to keep it relaxed. The most famous judges in the era of Uthman were Zayd bin Thabit in Medina, Abu ad-Darda in Damascus, Ka'b bin Suwar in Basra, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari in Basra, he was the governor too. Shura in Kufa. Ya'la bin Umayyah in Yemen. Thumama in Sana. Uthman bin Qais bin Abi. No. Uthman bin Qais bin Abil. His name is so long. Uthman bin Qais bin Abil As in Egypt. The rightly guided Caliph also left for us some legal rulings on retaliation, injuries, crimes, legal penalties, disciplinary action, worship, and mutual dealings. Later, these had a clear effect on different Islamic schools of law. Following are some of these rulings that had either derived from the religious text or gave as legal verdicts. Okay, so just to reiterate, he offered Ibn Umar a position as a judge, and he didn't take it. And some of the names I recognize is Zayd bin Thabit and Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Those are the ones I recognize the most. Retaliation, legal penalties, and disciplinary action. Murder. The first case Uthman judged was that of Ubaydullah bin Umar. He had killed the daughter of Abu Lu'lu'a, Umar's murderer. So, Umar's murderer. So that means Ubaydullah sought revenge by taking out the daughter of Abu Lu'lu'a. Let's see. He also struck with his sword and killed two men, a Christian called Jufayna and Hurmuzan, the ruler of Tustar. Oh. Dang, this guy is like out there. He's like. It was said that they had helped Abu Lu'lu'a in his attempt to kill Umar, and Allah knows best. Well, live by the sword, die by the sword. Umar had imprisoned him so that the next caliph could rule on his case. When Uthman became the caliph, the first case brought to his attention was the case of Ubaydullah. Wait a minute, if Umar's murderer, but if he's dead, how did he have him in jail? What are you talking about? How can you have your own murderer in jail? You're dead. I don't get it. Let's see. Ali said, it would not be fair to let him off. That's true. Yeah. He suggested that he should be killed. Some Muhajirin objected to this. Why? Amir bin al-As said, Commander of the believers, Allah has not made you responsible for this case. It did not happen in your time, so let it be. Well, justice is justice. Ain't no expiration date on justice. Finally, Uthman paid the indemnity of the victims out of his own pocket. Since these victims did not have any heirs, he considered them to be his responsibility, and the ruler has to do what he thinks is best. Ubaydullah was set free. Why? Was he guilty? Wait a minute. Was Ubaydullah the one who murdered Umar bin al-Khattab? Is that who they're talking about? Is that the Umar? Did he attempt and fail? Or did he succeed and they just don't know if he 100% did it? But if he was the one who murked the caliph, and then you know it was him, and you let him off, that's wrong, in my opinion. You murderer. Wait, hold on. It's very confusing, the name. So Ubaydullah bin Umar, he murked the daughter of Abu Lu'lu'a. Okay, I see. Okay. So, it's a lot of names here, so it's easy to get off track. So, Ubaydullah, he wanted revenge, it appears. So, killing the Christian guy, Jufayna, and Hurmuzan, we don't know why he did that. exactly. It hints that they had involvement, but the daughter is innocent, so okay. I guess it really depends. Let's see. Let's find out more information before we pass judgment. Okay. A narration in Tariq at-Tabari states that Al-Kamadaban, son of Hormuzan, forgave Ubaydullah. Abu Mansur said, I heard Al-Kamadaban talking about the killing of his father, saying, the Persians of Medina like to spend time together, and one day Fairuz passed by my father, who had a two-edged knife with him. He handed it to him and asked, what will you do with this in this country? He replied, I feel safe with it. Another man saw this, and when Umar was stabbed, he said, I saw this person with Hormuzan, and I saw him give the knife to Fairuz. Upon hearing this, Ubaydullah went and killed him. When Uthman became the caliph, he called me and handed Ubaydullah to me, saying, Son, this is the killer of your father, and you have more right to deal with him than us. Go and kill him. I left with him, and everybody was with me, wishing I would spare him. I asked him, Can I kill him? He said yes, and reviled Ubaydullah. I asked, Can you protect him? They replied no, and reviled him more. In spite of this, I did not kill him, and released him. People took me on their shoulders, and by Allah, I arrived at my house on the heads and shoulders of men. There is no contradiction between this narration and the one that states that Uthman pardoned Ubaydullah bin Umar and paid the prescribed indemnity to Hormuzan's heirs. This is because all the companions understood that Hormuzan's sons was entitled to revenge. And the second narration, we can see that they asked him to let him off, which he did. Seems like a very complicated case. The pardon in the first narration was related to Ubaidullah's taking the law into his own hands and applying opposition to the caliph's sole authority to issuing a ruling on the crime. So, took it into his own hands. Ubaydullah had broken the law and ruined the government's chance of identifying the cadre behind the crime, along with the rest of the individuals involved in this conspiracy. So it was still more to be had, and I guess impulsive then? Okay. It can also be said that he only pardoned Ubaydullah for the killing of Jufayna, the daughter of the Magian killer, because they had left no one behind to handle their affairs. Okay, so it wasn't like there was some blood money then due? Or something? Different narrations in history books do not differ on the point that the knife with which Umar was killed was in the hands of Hormuzan and Jufayna before the murder. Okay, so do not differ on the point about the knife. So this particular knife, it's interesting. People might have had custom daggers, so maybe that's part of it. It's interesting. We have so many like daggers now that I don't even think you could recognize it. But with longer attention spans and more attention to details, people recognize that kind of stuff, and maybe it was so custom made that he was able to really memorize it. After all, it was witnessed by two companions, namely Abdul Rahman bin Auf and Abdul Rahman bin Abi Bakr. The later narrations indicate that the killer, Abu Lu'lu'a, was with these two, and the three were whispering to each other. When Abdul Rahman bin Abi Bakr came to them without them knowing it, the knife fell from their hands, and after Umar was killed, it turned out that the murder weapon was just like the one described by these two witnesses. Hence, Hormuzan and Jufayna deserved to be killed. Scary. Ooh, that's so painful just thinking about it. The daughter of Abu Lu'lu'a, whose father had unalived himself in order to protect the identities of his partners, was killed erroneously. Thus, no one could be punished because of her. Ubaydullah had thought that she participated in the murder by hiding the weapon for her father. Oh, it's all making more sense now. So he just had this love, you know? He was quick to act, fit of rage, suspected her of participating in the conspiracy. So Ubaydullah was set free. Okay. Okay, I understand. Thieves. One day, some youth hailing from Kufa, from the province of Al-Walid bin Uqba, broke into the house of Ibn al-Haysuman al-Khuzai. He went out to confront them with his sword, but when he saw their number, he began to shout. Hearing this, the thieves told him to remain quiet or they would kill him. Abu Shura al-Khuzai saw this from where he was standing, and he shouted at them. Thus they struck at Haysuman and killed him. People surrounded and seized them. Abu Shurayh and his son bore witness that they had killed him while some of them were holding back the people. The governor wrote to Uthman about them. He replied with an order to execute them. They were executed at the castle gates in Rahaba. Executed at the castle gates. Public execution. So letting public, yeah, just read that. Public execution. Now, this was a home invasion. Now, today, I want you to think about something. In Sharia law, you pull some home invasion, someone can have a sword, chippity chop chop chop. We have some states with the stand your ground castle doctrine, but in other states in America now, where filthy liberals have ruled, you have a duty to flee the premises. You literally have to flee the premises, and that is quite sad. There are lots of pro-Second Amendment articles that you can read where people were not able to use their Second Amendment right, and that was bad for them. I've done the Safe Citizen series where people were able to defend their home from crazy home invasions, but public executions are a wonderful way of setting an example. Liberals, they say, no, what you gotta do is you gotta put them in jail. Don't make them work, because, labor camps, how horrible. What you gotta do is tax the citizens who are good people to fund the sloth life of the felon. And the felon gets to have a bunch of gay sex and homemade wine that they make called Pruno in the toilet, eat potato chips, and use illicit drugs that are smuggled in by the guards and other people, and they get to watch TV and earn their GED, and, relax and have access to showers, even if it's only 5 minutes, But they never have to contribute to the state again with their labor. They never have to worry about a roof over their head. They're in this tiny cell going nuts, but we can't use them for anything else. They just sit there. So, out of sight, out of mind. Whereas we could do other things and have public demonstrations to instill fear in the criminal. The criminal is not going to fear modern prisons because you can find a way to have fun. You can find a way to get along. Oh, how weak we've become. How weak we've become. Umar bin Asim al-Tamimi recited the following verse of poetry. Deprive not your neighbors and thus oppress them. Under Ibn Affan's rule, O ill-natured men. He also recited, the Ibn Affan whom you have come to know, by the Quran's rule he made the thieves depart, always on watch, implementing the book on each of their necks and every body part. I like that. Yes. How we long for strong rulers. See, the youth have to see. You can't see. It's really difficult to get a rebellious youth. If you're like, if you don't stop, you're gonna go to jail. It's like an illusion, smoke and mirrors. They don't like. What are you talking about? But if they saw, like, okay, you're going to be executed in the public square, like how Kalinsky hates how Saudi Arabia sometimes has public executions. Kyle, now that he's married, he's very weak, bleached his hair. He's just really quite soft. He had an interview with Vosh where he was talking about, so tell me about furries. He's very weak now. That girl Crystal Ball whipped him good, but totally emasculated him. And if the youth saw that this is like a direct final action, that gains more respect. Because a strong spirit has to see a strong punishment. You can't be like the liberal, like, here's a box of chocolates, here's some flowers, and let's do 14,000 hours of therapy and talk about your mommy issues and how you didn't get the trophy in 2nd grade and how that made you become a ravenous, bad home invasion criminal. No. And then the atheist is like, let's just give him a bunch of pills. Give him a bunch of pills. And you're like, no, we want to punish him. And he's like, pills. Let's charge the taxpayer more pills. We can sell pills to the criminal. Pills. And you're like, no, we want punishment. We want justice, not your pills. It's really funny how the atheist scammer is like, no, don't punish the criminal. We'll give him pills. It's like, how does that help the people? Sounds like it's only helping your wallet here. No. I care about reforming the criminal. Let's give him psychotic meds. Let's give him SSRIs. Yeah. And then the shareholders in the companies are like, yes, pill them up, them prisoners. That'll reform them. This will give justice to the people. No, we totally aren't making a bunch of money. That's not our motivation. We're here for justice and law and order, not our own bank accounts pushing pills on prisoners. It's like you're getting ready to give out swift justice, get rid of the evil, set an example by executing him, and then you have the liberal atheists prance in, no, stop! Don't swing the sword. Give him pills and make this big pharmaceutical company rich. That's a better form of justice. By stuffing him full of pills for years on end and charging the taxpayer, that is how we'll get justice, law, and order. You see the games that they play? Oh my gosh. A man killed a merchant for his money. This took place during the Caliphate of Uthman. The punishment was retaliation by killing. See? Death penalty. Swift. Liberals, it's quite disgusting, No death row. Yes, there's some innocent people who get caught up on death row. They'll be recompensed by Allah. If they're not a kafir, there'll be some type of remedy for them, okay? But it's a very low percentage. But if you watch a lot of true crime, and you see there was one story that I watched yesterday. A woman targeted a pregnant woman, became friends with her on purpose. This woman lied about being pregnant to her husband, and then she buddied up to the pregnant woman, and then basically did a C-section upon this woman against her will, and was so brutal with the C-section that the cervix was removed along with the ovaries, and the woman took this baby to the hospital and said, I just gave birth in a car. My baby, can you check the baby? And the hospital staff started to check this woman out and be like, she doesn't show signs of that she just gave birth. This is strange. So they call law enforcement, find out that this woman murdered a pregnant woman and cut out the baby and stole it and then went to the hospital. And then, they put her in prison, but she didn't get the death penalty. I want you to think about the victim. And then remember in the Sexual Revolution book that we've been reading, she actually said, Laura Penny, psychotic moron, oh, the Republican Christians say they're pro-life, but they're for the death penalty, so, they're very, very bad, and, they're not pro-life. And then I pointed out, a baby is an innocent life. Abortion ends that life. It brutally rips apart and sucks out the baby and ends a heartbeat of a little human who didn't do nothing wrong. A violent, wicked criminal who has done atrocities against their fellow human, that's called consequences for their actions. They don't really deserve the same life. The baby has potential life. The felon has proven they don't really value the life of others or themselves because they did actions that they knew were illegal and would end them up in prison, right? So, liberals always find a way to coddle the felon, which emboldens them to continue because an evil mind looks for avenues out. This is why evil people can cry on the dime. They'll manipulate you and then slice you across their throat and escape. They are chameleons. They can really get inside of you and then escape. Right? But a liberal's like, no. They just need some wonderful love and affection. You must send a social worker there. And then in reality, I'd argue that the retaliation should be eye for an eye. And then Christians will quote Gandhi and say, like, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And it's like, okay then, let those who see be an example. Those who aren't blind, those are the ones who will get to survive. Survival of the fittest, right? Okay. If you're going to allow people to just go around murking, and then you don't want to take their life and rid society of that cancer, that's how you get an infection. Like, imagine if you saw cockroaches just infesting your barn, and you said, no, you must not stop on them, and it breeds to get more. You saw a bed bug, you didn't squish it, instead you let it bite you every night, it breeds, you have an infestation, then it's overwhelming and you lose. When criminals become so high, you have a problem. Like at Bukele in El Salvador, he had to work very hard to clean up El Salvador. Mexico's having a problem with their cartels. It's like you can't, there's a little fire and it just engulfs everything around it. That's what criminals are. And there are different levels of crimes. So it says here, a man killed a merchant for his money. That's a robbery. And, like, let's say there's a woman comes home, catches her man in the bed with someone else, and then she blasts, eliminates him. That's like a crime of passion, and I think that you have to have mercy and leniency for someone like that. Same for a man. If he comes home, see his wife with someone, and he puts some shells into both of them while they're in the act, because he just has this snap reaction at the shock, I think that you have to have mercy on someone like that, because the enragement, and if you think about it, the death penalty for adultery, and you set an example with how cheating is wrong. If you want to have another lover, you can divorce, end your relationship, but committing adultery is never the answer. And so, when you think about how the criminals today, there's so much body potential there. They're not utilized. So if you're not going to utilize them and you're going to waste resources on them, if there's only a limited amount of water and food on this planet, which I think that there will always be enough water and food, desalinate the oceans, go to Antarctica, gather up the snow, melt it, purify it, bottle it, sell it. There's tons of things we can do, solution-based oriented mindsets, understand me, to rid that. But their argument is, we don't have the resources, therefore, we gotta tax you, we gotta not allow you to eat beef, We say, hold up, how about we get to eat beef, but you just empty the prisons? How much water are the prisons consuming? Okay, how many people are doing life sentences? Okay, let's speed run them. If we can treat cows and pigs and chickens in the most cruel way in factory farms, and monkeys in labs for vivisection, testing cosmetics and stuff, but we can't get rid of violent offenders, and we can do abortions on, for these cute little babies. The abortionist has to count, oh, here's the head, here's foot this, here's foot that, has to make sure all the body parts are out of the woman, stuff those body parts in a bag, and then they're shipped off. Social media, Google hides all the process, the cleaning up process of that. So we can, as a society, permit that for animals and babies, but we can't permit the death penalty fast, cheap, and efficient for violent, wicked offenders. This is because the liberal has placed the criminal above the good people. And in religion, the good, law-abiding citizens are put above the criminal. And the criminal is punished for their actions. And you have to be mindful to teach the youth a solid wake-up call. Not coddle them and stop it, little slap on the wrist, stop it. No. They need to see this stuff so that they see that there's real consequences in life. So, when you have people like Kyle Kulinski and them saying that death penalty is barbaric in any circumstance, whether it's in public or in a private room, in a prison, well, you can see that they don't really actually understand justice, and they have a very frail heart. And the bleeding heart liberal, the cliche, is what bleeds society. These felons hurt corrections officers, they hurt other inmates, they suck up our tax dollars. They don't even have to go to labor camps really to participate. And if you Google the percentages of how many U.S. prisoners are doing labor, it's very tiny. And I'm talking like we need Russian-style gulags. We need Chinese-style camps. Hard labor camps. Breaking rocks. Building things. I did a video where we can put chips in them. I'm not talking political prisoners who did a protest. I'm talking the violent ones. The really deadly ones. The ones that have a mental issue, a spiritual issue, who don't want to be reformed, people who are cannibals, things like that. Put them to work, okay? Put them to work. And then chip them, and then put the chip so deep inside their body. Put multiples in case one malfunctions to where they'll never be able to escape, and a drone will always find them. And if they run off, just send the drone, send that stupid DARPA dog, and go and get them, Because we can't do this anymore. When I read about these instances of a strong leader coming in and saying no to the criminal, that is what we need. Because we women suffer when the criminal reigns. Always. And a bleeding heart liberal woman and a bleeding heart liberal male will always make our lives harder. Because they are subservient to the wicked and they don't have the backbone to really go against the criminals. They can talk about, pollution, which is good, healthcare, which is wonderful, but they are not good when it comes to dealing with crime. Case in point, California. And New York City. With all the looting. Let me know what you think, fam. We learned quite a lot in this section. And it's very informative. I have truly enjoyed it. We've read over 200 pages. And done countless hours digging into the text, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in and spending some time here. Let me know what you think and your opinions and what you like learning about Caliph Uthman. May Allah be pleased with him. Take care, and if you'd like to join my blog, you can go to www.subscribestar.com/Milahan Archive. Hope to see you there.